How's everybody doing? It's Cevan. Join with me today is Reed and Tyler, and this is episode 7 of Likely to Dispute.
We have a very fun episode today. We're starting our team breakdown series. But before that, we're going to have a question of the day. But before that, I just need to go on a little rant here. After our little rule change form came and went, nothing changed from the past rule form, but I just don't get why people don't want to add more IR spots. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. I have yet to hear a real way that you can take advantage of it. And I love you, Ian. You're one of the best owners in the league. You're active. You make the league very fun. But your reasoning behind not voting for it, because you want to try to vote for a different rule that passed overwhelmingly like a year from now, just makes absolutely no sense to me. Everybody thinks it's just a small thing. And my opinion on this was the same before last year and now, after I had an injury battered season last year. Everybody doesn't care about it, and the second it happens to them, everyone's like, "Oh, why don't we have more IR spots?" And I mentioned it in the chat, but this rule was tied in the inaugural rule change thing, and Savannah and I just broke the tie because Savannah wanted less, I wanted more, and then we just ended up swapping. I believe roster size was the other one that was tied. So I, I just, I just don't get why people don't want to add IR spots because there's just no way to take advantage of it, and it's gonna annoy me. I don't get it.
It's all collusion. That's the reason.
I mean, Savant changed his mind on something, meaning the number of IR spots, which that alone
That is
should make
big.
people want to change their mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was. You want to go, Savan?
yeah, I was just gonna say, so when we were coming up with the rules before the league even started, we ended up deciding on 3, 5, and unlimited, and I was very strongly against unlimited, with because we have out players and IR players eligible for IR. So like, I mean, you could literally have unlimited, which I don't know. I just didn't like the thought of that. But I did change my mind into wanting to move it to 5 at least to increase by 2 because while it didn't affect me last year, I can see how that would be annoying. If you've got half your team that's eligible, but you only have 3 on there, and at least adding 2 spots, it's more than just. I mean, it's more than 3. So I was good switching it till 5. I'm also okay leaving it at 3, but I definitely did vote to expand it to 5.
I hope everybody who voted no on it has an injury battered season, and then everybody who voted yes has a year of perfect health. That's my wish for the year now. I don't even care if I win the championship. That's what I want to happen. I want to be right about this and prove everybody that more IR spots is good.
Fair take. I
Okay.
think that's
Rant
good.
ran over. Tyler, hit us with the question of the day here.
All right. Need you two fellas just off the dome. Tell me who you guys think is the most average fantasy football player, can be any position, current players, let's say going into 2025. Just you don't have to back it up with stats or any of that mumbo jumbo. Just most average player that you think of when I ask that question.
When you say average, you mean like average
Uh,
starter or just like someone who like kind of on the roster,
yeah.
kind of not on the roster, that type of guy?
Just like someone who's probably on a roster right now, and you could start them if you want, but they're never going to score you too many points, but they're never going to be a zero.
I've got it.
Just someone who's like pretty uninspiring, but you can probably count on for at least a few points, but
I
they're
I
never going
got
to
it.
blow you away.
I got it.
Savon, hit
I'll,
us.
the first name when you came, or when you said that first name that
Uh,
came to my mind. What?
no, no, you can go ahead.
Sorry. I'm lost. But the first name that came to mind when you said that, and I think this is going to resonate with both of you, DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift,
The most
I'm
the most
I,
average because he's not somebody you're excited for, but he's not somebody that's going to goose you because he's going to catch a few balls a game. He's got the potential to break one long one, but other than that, you're looking at about 10 points off the top of my head. In his 5 years, in his 5 years in the league, he has finish between RB 18 and 22 every single season. And so a low end RB2 is, I think that would be average.
Okay. I could see it, but it's just for me, I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
newly minted DeAndre Swift owner, so I'm gonna say he's just above average on
Okay.
mine, but totally
That's fair.
defensible for me. Do you have one read or do you want me to go?
I do, but it's probably better if you go first.
Okay. I also thought of running back. In my mind, it's Najee Harris. I know he has a new team and people are excited for him to get working with Harbaugh, but I just think of some rough Steelers games where he's just 2, 3 yards up the gut. He's not
20
one of
carry
the,
for 70-yard type day.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
And like he might get like a goal line touchdown and every other week, something like that. I'm not saying he's bad. It's just like he's just pretty average in my mind. And he was great his rookie year, and it's just kind of been slowly declining since then.
Stevan, you were going to say something?
I, just in comparison to DeAndre Swift, I'm pretty sure Najee has two RB1 seasons his first 2 years.
But we're talking about like
We're-
right now.
yeah, I was gonna say I like Swift's upside now more than I do
Oh,
Hot Harris's.
well, okay. Well,
Well, like
I
you're
might.
trying to merge what they have done like recently over like what you think they'll do up like now.
Well,
Like
that's how evaluating players is, I guess, in
correct.
my
But
mind.
Yeah,
like I also see where Savant's coming from as like the track record of average.
Sure,
Like I think
yeah.
sure.
Swift knocks that perfectly.
Okay, okay,
That's where
fair
my
enough.
mind went.
Yeah.
Fair.
I see both sides. My guy, why I said it was good to break it up. I'm taking another one of Tyler's players. I think Rashad Bateman is a great one because
Mhm.
forever he's like right on the border of being rosterable. You might start him, you might catch a long touchdown. Kind of similar to Savant's reasoning is like you might get he's always going to catch a pass or two, so he might get a couple points, but rarely is he going to have actual spike weeks. It's just going to be like he catches a long touchdown, you might get 15 or 20, but always going to hang on the roster because he was a first round pick, but never going to be a guy where you're like locked in starter. So Bateman was someone that came to mind for me, and Najee was one as well. And then kind of along the same lines, I also thought of Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, I like Ramon.
I will say Bateman is not Tyler's guy because he just got traded.
Oh,
But
you're right. I forgot about that. Never
I
mind.
forget
Yeah.
what the trade was, but
Tank Bigsby for
Yes,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Rashad
yeah.
Tank
Bateman.
Bigsby deal.
That's right.
Tank Bigsby
Yeah.
would have been a good answer as well.
Whoa,
You
whoa,
mean the
whoa, whoa,
Jaguars
whoa.
running back one?
That's
Uh,
right.
he's on the team.
He is number one on their depth chart, I believe.
If you look at the sleeper depth chart, I do not care.
The sleeper depth chart that doesn't have rookies on it, I think.
No, it does,
Oh, they added
but
him. Good.
they're like they're like at the bottom of 10
Hmm.
names. But all right, that was some good discourse.
Likely to dispute on that one, I'd say.
Something.
Definitely.
Okay, question of the day over, rant over. We're into the meat and potatoes here. We're really excited, along with the fine dining mock draft. This was the concept that Savannah and I were most excited for, and we concepted the idea of the podcast. And now having Tyler here is all the better because we are now starting with Tyler's team on the team breakdown. Just for those of you who may not be looking, we will have a bunch of very well done graphics, if I do say so myself, on the screen here, detailing everything we're talking about. So if you want to watch the video on the screen, that is an option for you. We're better than just your average audio podcast. So we're going to start here just to summarize a couple of things about Tyler's team. So last year, he finished 8-6, which was fourth in the league, and he was also fourth in points for. Um, what we're going to do for each team, we're going to each of us have a power ranking, and rather than doing a number, because a lot of us felt, or all of us felt that a lot of the teams were very close. So rather than giving a specific number, we're going to put everybody into a tier, and those tiers going from top or best to worst are favorites, contenders, playoff aspirations, and then maybe next year. So you can see on the screen here, Savan and I have playoff aspirations for Tyler's team this year, while Tyler has himself as a contender. So Savan, give us your thoughts just broadly on why you have Tyler in the playoff aspirations tier here.
Okay, I have Tyler in the playoff aspirations because I view there's a big clump, in my opinion, of a good 6 to 7 teams in the league that I could make a very good argument for all of them being in the playoffs. And so for me, he fell in that kind of tier of whatever 6 or 7 players that could, and so while I would say it's about a 50-50% chance. So I kind of just group that tier together of them all being able to make the playoffs and having a roster that could get to the playoffs. So
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what you said. I think his roster is very solid. I think he lacks some standout players that really put him into the contender tier, which again we'll talk about here shortly. But I sided more with Savan. But the best part about fantasy football is being delusionally high on your own team. So Tyler, tell us why your team is a contender.
But this is a beautiful graphic, I'll say. But the one thing that this graphic isn't going to tell you about my team is the depth. And that's something I'll mention throughout this episode is how much I love the depth on my team. And so there are several players on my bench right now. Again, there's not a lot of standout stats. I mean, I know those guys are important to help win championships, and I may be lacking in that a little bit right now. Which brings me to my next point is I have a lot of draft capital. I know keep trade cut isn't everything, but I do have the most keep trade cut value in terms of draft capital. And so if or when I choose to make big moves, I can use that draft capital to my advantage. I might not have the studs right now, or I might. We'll see. But I love my depth and I love my draft capital to be able to push me over the top. So I guess I'll play it week by week, see where I'm at. But I think if the cards fall right, I am a contender, and I think I see that more than I don't.
Okay. And as Tyler mentioned, we have the Keep Trade Cut rankings on there. As you said, these are not everything. These are just a brief overview of how one, community ranking service views the team. Just to give a brief overview, we're going to go over all of them ourselves. Um, so good kind of overarching view of the team here. We're going to break down into some more specific accolades here. So first one, team MVP. Savan, you have Devonte Adams, while Tyler and I have Trey McBride. So, Savan, give us your reason on why you think Devonte Adams is Tyler's MVP.
let's see. The Rams have a very small window. I don't see the Cardinals being as competitive. Trey McBride is a great player. Dynasty tight end one, tight end two. Sorry, top two tight end regardless. I love the addition of Devonte Adams in the Rams offense. That's I think we all believe is going to put up points. I know they love to run the ball, but Stafford is still a great quarterback. He can support two players. He's shown that his entire career. They didn't sign Devonte Adams for that amount of money just to not use him. And so, kind of along the lines Tyler was saying with his depth, I mean, he held on to Devonte Adams, and I don't think he could have went to a much better situation. And so, I just didn't want to go chalk here. And I think Devonte Adams, even at his age 31 season, he hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. So I think he's in for a enormous season.
32 actually, just to correct you there.
32, even older.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So, from my perspective, Tyler, it seems like you agree with me. Everything you said about Trey McBride is true, and I think the advantage that he provides, given we're in a tight end premium league and the depth at tight end is so limited, as it always is. I mean, it's deeper than it is now, but having a truly elite tight end in a tight end premium league is really special. So for me, I think this was an easy pick. All respect all everything Savant said about Devontae Adams, but I think the advantage that McBride provides over a receiver here is quite a lot. So Tyler, do you have anything different to add there on McBride?
The most obvious thing about Trey McBride is his lack of touchdowns last year. His two receiving touchdowns came in week 17 and 18, which were irrelevant for me because we don't play in week 18 and I was not in the championship. He had one fumble recovery in the end zone from James Conner, shout out. And that was his only touchdown that really impacted my matchup. So the fact that he finished as the number two tight end with no receiving touchdowns, it just screams that there's going to be some type of regression there. It may not be, double digits touchdowns or anything like that, but doesn't need to be. Trey McBride, he's hitting his peak at a great time for me. So I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, as the owner of Trey McBride in our redraft league, every week that passed without him catching a touchdown. As I missed the playoffs and I was trying to make a playoff push at the end and fell one game short. I kept saying, okay, eventually he's going to start catching touchdowns and he's going to start carrying my team. And he just, while he put up some great weeks, just like yeah, he didn't catch a touchdown for me when it mattered at all. And it's just so weird for the player of his quality. And whether that be Kyler missing him, he did have one drop early in the year against the 49ers. So yeah, I would do just about anything to get Trey McBride on my team here, but Tyler has made it clear he's not available unless it blows him away right now. So we'll see if that changes here the next couple of weeks. So sorry, next couple of months. Okay, MVP, that one's a pretty obvious one. But the next one, most improved. I think I'm going to start here with DeAndre Swift. I kind of cheated here because I don't necessarily think DeAndre Swift is going to be most improved from last year, but I think he might be most improved from what we think he is now, as a lot of people still seem to think that the Bears are going to replace him with a new lead runner of some kind. And while I do think that's very possible to happen, I think the trade he made with Mark Andrews for DeAndre Swift straight up, as someone who's not a huge fan of Mark Andrews, getting Swift, who is still currently the lead back of the Bears, and ideally going to be a good offense next year. I think that could be a great value. So again, kind of pointing to Tyler's point earlier on depth, I think that he's most improved from what people are kind of expecting him to be now versus what he's going to end up being this upcoming year. So DeAndre Swift for me, Tyler, kick it to you. Marshawn Lloyd, kind of a lost year last year. Why is he your most improved?
Yeah, Marshawn Lloyd last year dealt with some injuries. I believe he had a hamstring thing and dealt with appendicitis as well. I'll take you back to 2024 when Marshawn Lloyd was a third round draft pick to the Green Bay Packers. He was drafted pretty high for me in the inaugural draft, as you know, it seemed to be the obvious handcuff to Josh Jacobs. And like I said, his 2024 injury or year kind of got riddled with injuries. However, what makes him my most improved player and someone I'm pretty excited about is the fact that the Packers really didn't add anyone significant to the running back room over the offseason. We saw last year Emmanuel Wilson have some glimpses of success behind Josh Jacobs. And I think if something happens to Jacobs, a player who's notably been really durable over his career, but you know, with running backs that could change at any moment, I think there's a real chance for Marshawn Lloyd to break out in a way. It may not be a huge breakout, but I think there's significant opportunity and room for improvement for a guy who had high draft capital. In his final year at USC, his average yards per attempt was just over 7. So I think Marshawn Lloyd definitely has some juice. He has the capital, and I think he has the opportunity. I think there could be some real points scored by Lloyd this year.
Okay, perfect. Savon, Justin Fields, most improved. Kind of an obvious case here, but what do you got?
Uh, Fun fact, all three of these players should have been on my team at the same point. Tyler botched a trade last second last year. Um, just a quick fun fact. But Justin Fields, uh, yeah, like you said, it's kind of explains itself. But when he was on the Bears, even in 2022, when they had when they did have the worst roster in the National Football League, he's a fantasy superstar. He is what he is at this point. He's never going to wow you with his arm, but on any play he can take off. And rushing quarterbacks are that's what makes fantasy football run is rushing quarterbacks. And so him getting money from the Jets to be the starter for at least one season. They're going to lean. They got a defensive minded head coach. They took the offensive coordinator from the Lions, but they said they're going to design the scheme around Fields. And while they have Brees, and not a lot of receiving weapons, it really should be a run first offense. And so with Justin Fields at the helm, you know what you're getting. You're getting a lot of RPOs, read options, QB power. And so just him getting 7 to 12 rushing attempts, whether scrambled or QB design runs, those points are going to add up and they're going to add up quickly. He's also a candidate to run. Or not a candidate, but he can break a 50-yard run at any point. And when you're getting that from your quarterback on top of pretty much any passing that he gives you, which he does have a very solid wide receiver one in Garrett Wilson, then Fields should look to improve on his, I believe, 6 starts last season.
Yeah. Yeah, like we talked about, really easy case to make there. And Tyler and I will talk about him a little bit later, in a different section here. But yeah, totally agree with all that. A lot of big chance to improve in a different offense this year as the full-time starter. So yeah, after most improved, we're going with the sleeper. Savon, Trey Benson has been a hot topic for you and Tyler and trade talks for quite a while now. So why is Trey Benson your sleeper for Tyler's team this year?
Okay, so you may or may not know, but I've been trying to acquire Trey Benson for about a year or so, probably a little less. But I've been trying to get Trey Benson. That 2024 running back class outside of Bucky Irving was irrelevant. Trey Benson is someone that I liked going into the draft last year. And James Conner, while he's been good on the Cardinals, you're kind of just waiting for the wheels to fall off. And I thought that might have been last year, but James Conner was still himself. He usually gets hurt. He didn't get hurt. Um, Trey Benson, it kind of took him a while into the season before he was getting real touches. And while he didn't do much with those touches, I still liked his tape in college. And so another year, or his rookie year is done. James Conner is older. And so I could see him hopefully earning a timeshare at least and maybe overtake him, even though James Conner got his extension. And once Trey Benson's on the field getting touches, I don't think James Conner is going to be able to hold him off for long. So I would still like to acquire him if possible, but probably not.
Maybe
The,
we'll have a trade happen on the pod here. It'd be
you
awesome.
know,
Ooh.
it's just the more you opine for Trey Benson, the more you make me feel like I have, you know, gold here. So the more you want him, the more it makes me not want to trade him.
No, I know, but like that's what you gotta try to make trades for players you like.
That's
That's what
right.
I've been doing. And I
Savon,
and we had a trade done, but you botched it.
Well, just wasn't good enough.
Savon recently learned of the term white whale in terms of getting something that you've always wanted but have never been able to capture. I think it's fair to say Trey Benson is Savon's white whale. So
Yes, and when he breaks out, you heard it here first. I was on him. I'm the only one on him.
I think the guy who probably owns him is probably on him
I was
too,
just
if
gonna
I had to
say,
guess.
Tyler, you don't want him. You literally tried to trade him to me, but you botched it.
you're right, I botched it.
Okay, moving off Trey Benson here. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about him later. Tyler, big trade for Tank Bigsby this year, or just a couple weeks ago for Rashad Bateman. Tank Bigsby, what do you got on him?
Yeah, another player I think is being slept on. I've liked Tank Bigsby since he got drafted. Now, with Liam Cohen coaching Jacksonville now, and with Liam Cohen's previous success with Bucky Irving, notably, I think a lot of people are kind of lazily comparing Bashal Tootin to Bucky Irving. And I don't entirely agree with that. I think Tootin and Irving are two different prospects. Tootin's had quite a bit faster 40-yard dash than Irving did at the combine there. And I don't think the Jaguars will necessarily just be a carbon copy of what the Buccaneers were last year. And so with everyone really liking Tootin this year and questions about ETN, I think Tank Bigsby honestly could find an opportunity. I think people are sleeping on Bigsby a little bit. I think there are plenty of carries to go around. He has been in Jacksonville for 2 years now. And I think he offers a little bit different style of um, running back production than perhaps Tootin or ETN do, who are maybe a little bit quicker. I know that Tank Bigsby has had fumbling issues. However, I'm a big believer that fumbling issues aren't necessarily something that stick for year to year for a player. I know they can, but I think if Tank can really show out this spring, this summer, learn to hold on the ball a little bit more, I think there's plenty of yards to be had for him. And, the big thing is last year, Bucky Irving was really successful, of course, but Rashad White was no slouch either. So I think it's entirely possible that there's two viable running backs in Jacksonville, and I think I have one of them with Tank.
Well,
Savon, as
I
the
have
owner
the
of the
other
other
two.
two, what are your thoughts?
Um, I mean, between me and Tyler, someone's going to get the running back touches in Jacksonville. But no, I agree with him. I do think, however, obviously the new regime, they don't have any ties to ETN or Bigsby. So I think
Sure.
I th my personal prediction is I think by midseason it will, if I had to guess, I would say it'll be Tank and Bashal because Bashal and ETN are more similar and Tank's kind of the bigger back that is more your early down grinder. Whereas I could see Bashal earning that third down slash pass catching role. And so by midseason, I would say it's probably Tank and Bashal, but with Travis being left out. But either way, I think me and Tyler have two of the three. I mean, obviously, we have two of the three relevant players, unless you guys are LaQuint Allen believers, which
I
I
am.
am.
Do you guys know Tank Bigsby's first name? It's not Tank.
No,
Agreed.
Give it to us.
It's Cartavius Bigsby.
That
that
makes him way less scary than Tank.
no, I
Ah,
like Artavius.
yeah.
I mean,
That's
he's a
sick.
yeah, but it's Tank. Tank is way cooler. You don't want a guy named Tank running at you in the open field.
No, because that's obviously a nickname. I'd much rather see Tank than Cartavius in the hole.
Tank Monkus.
Okay.
Okay. My last one here. This one was really easy for me. I'm a huge Jacoby Myers fan. I think he's one of the more underrated, not just fantasy players, but NFL wide receivers. Like if you look at his production from 21 to this year, he was wide receiver 30, 28, 24, and 19. And that was with Mac Jones. Cam Newton, I think, was there his last year in New England. Aiden O'Connell. I don't know, whoever else has been playing quarterback for him sucks. Geno Smith is excellent at elevating his receivers and their fantasy value. Obviously, he's going to be the number two in their offense behind Brock Bowers. They added Jack Besh and they added Genty, but I really like what he provides this year. As I don't think there's any chance he's anything less than like a flex option. Like I would love to have him, and he just kind of got thrown around like chopped liver in that deal that Tyler made for the 201 in the draft. Like not only did Tyler get a first, two thirds, he also got a top 20 wide receiver last year in just 15 games. So I'm a huge fan. I think he's very underrated. And if I didn't have as many receivers as I had, I would be aggressively trying to acquire him from Tyler here. So Jacoby Myers was an easy pick for me here.
Yeah, I'm excited about him. You're definitely right. When I was working out that trade, Jacoby Myers did just kind of feel like a throwing piece, but he's not, and he is criminally underrated. I'm honestly still trying to come around on him myself.
Well, if you're looking to dump him, let me know. I'm a
Will
fan.
do.
Okay, sleeper, all done. Moving on here to the best value. This was more about how they were acquired, or essentially their value relative to how the community values them. Tyler and I are in agreement here on Justin Fields. I think that's again for the third time a pretty easy case. He drafted him as his QB3 in the inaugural draft. Hasn't left his team, and I his dynasty value is not that high just because you don't really know how long he's going to start past this year. But as we talked about already, he's an elite fantasy option when he is playing, and there's nothing to say he's not going to play this year. Like he's a bona fide QB1 this year as Tyler starter. He waited it out, botched the trade with Cevan, and ended up getting a QB1 out of botching this trade. So that's great value to me in the super flex league. That's awesome. So Tyler, anything else to
Yeah.
add on Fields?
Yeah, just one thing. Here are five quarterbacks drafted before Justin Fields last or in the inaugural draft. Will Levis, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith. I'm sorry, that's only four. But the fifth one is Daniel Jones is who you drafted one pick after Fields. And so just in that crop, I think anyone with the right mind would pick Fields over him. You could make an argument for maybe Geno, but I think that pick in the 12th round, I mean, even if it's only 1 year of starting this year, he had some starts last year. I'll take that every time.
Yeah, that quarterback run happened, and while I do agree, like that the value is there now. Like keeping a third quarterback who, again, at the time when of the inaugural draft, he was supposed to be behind Russ, and then Russ got hurt. So Fields ended up starting those 6 weeks, and then he didn't end up starting the rest of the year, other than a couple of designed run plays for him. So there is value in that extra roster spot, but the value you gain just by holding him through his bench time last year was phenomenal. So yeah, easy case for us there. So Tyler or Savon, this is where you have Trey McBride as best value. What do you got on the value here?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what tight end McBride was drafted. Um, but he's locked and loaded as a top two tight end, him and Brock Bowers, and I don't see a world where Trey McBride over the next, I would say, 5 years, maybe however long Kyler's there, that's how long he's going to be a top two tight end and then some. As we've learned, tight ends, they're hard to come by. Me and Reed were, or maybe I wasn't as much, but Reed definitely was clawing through the waiver wire trying to find a tight end. He found one that stuck. There's a lot of teams in the league that could use a tight end. I traded for another one. I drafted another one, just trying to find somebody to stick in my tight end spot. Trey McBride, you can leave there for the next 5 years and feel good about it, feel great about it. And so I think going early tight end really paid a benefit to Tyler because it's just not a spot that you look at on your team and have any questions. So just taking a good player, probably where they should have went, turned out to be a great pick, and then some. And I think his ADPs even increased in startups with our settings. So
I was just gonna say in our startup, Sam Laporta was the first tight end at 211, and I think Trey McBride after last year definitely could be right around there if
yeah,
we
the
were
two
to
three turn. Yep.
redraft
Yeah.
this year.
I believe if I remember correctly, the pocket he went in was him, Brock Bowers, and Dalton Kincaid. So
Yeah.
picking a great tight end early is great if you pick the right one. So
Yeah.
there's definitely, yeah, agreed on the value there. Lock and loaded, top two or three tight end at the very lowest here for the next 5 years. So big fan there, no arguments. But yeah, well, I think that there will be crossover on some episodes, but between like you might use someone for two different accolade type things, but we didn't have any here, and Tyler and I ended up using him as our MVP. So okay, best value done here. Now we get into a couple of negative ones. So next one we have the one I'm most excited for is the overrated section. All of us have three different answers here, three different popular players. So Savon, why don't you kick us off? Why do you have Joe Mixon as Tyler's most overrated player?
Okay, so Joe Mixon, his entire career he's been good. So his yards per carry has always been low. He eats on volume, and the volume is never shy. Whether it was when he was with Bengals or his 1 year with the Texans, they just give him the ball, whether it's carries or receptions. There wasn't really a running back. I know they had the Damian Pierce three seasons ago, I think, but they really never used an RB2. I think it was they just kind of platooned Dare Wale when they could, but he gets so much volume, and I just don't know how he keeps getting volume. Like he's not efficient, but like I said, it's just strictly volume, and I think they're gonna find a way. I know they drafted Woody Marks, um, who was arguably the best pass catching back in this draft. So maybe they see a vision there to strictly just give Mixon carries, but I just think this is finally the year where the volume starts to go down, and so you, by nature, start to lose points because he's not getting as many touches, and they need to preserve him because he's getting older. So I think that just finally starts this year.
What's an efficient yards per carry for you? I know yards per carry isn't everything and it's kind of context dependent, but
I mean, efficient or good? I would say probably five.
Five is like,
that's crazy.
yeah, there's only like a couple guys in NFL history over five in their career.
What? Let's see. What's Mr. Mixon at?
Mixon's usually
Mi-
like low
Four.
fours.
He's at
Yeah.
4.15 last year, and that's his second highest total, with 2018 being the only one that bests it.
So he's like a high threes type guy.
Except for the
Mi-
number that was just a low four, like just now.
This season, yeah. I'm for his career. He's a high three. He's like at four. I wouldn't say 4 yards is efficient.
I guess I don't care necessarily about his whole career as I do last year, which is 4.15. But
His
fair
career is
enough.
4.1 career average.
There you go.
Okay.
I will also push back on this. While I agree with your point, the fact that Mixon is, a volume guy, he relies on volume and touchdowns. I don't see any reason to think he's not going to get that again. He was a top 10 running back in points per game last year. He was an absolute monster in the games that he was playing. He only missed 2 or 3 games, I think. So it's not like he had an extended injury. The Texans' offensive line hopefully will be better. The offense as a whole will be better, which means more scoring opportunities. And yes, they added Woody Marks in day 3, but I don't see him as a true threat to Mixon because again, his receiving value is just kind of cherry on top for him because of the volume that he gets on the ground and his ability to score touchdowns. So I see where you're coming from, but I personally would push back on him as the most overrated here.
Well, he's going into year 9, and
Hmm.
I mean, he's still been good because he's still getting so much work. He had 12 touchdowns last year, but I just, you would think at some point a team would want to not put as much tread on his tires, but it's been the opposite where teams are just running him into the ground, but he's still doing it. So maybe overrated going into the year because nothing the last 8 years has said he's not going to be good, but I just maybe this is the year. That's where I was at.
You always want to be a year early instead of a year late. So Savant's hoping to hit it on the head here. So Tyler, legacy guy for you, all timer, Terry McLaurin, one of your favorite fantasy
Hmm.
guys ever, almost the logo on the podcast here.
Yep,
Why is Terry McLaurin your most overrated player? He probably takes offense to that.
he does, and this feels like I'm backstabbing him right now. But the argument for me here, if I'm kind of zooming out and looking at my team from maybe a more or a less biased perspective, is the opposite argument of Trey McBride in that. Well, it's the same argument actually, just opposite result. In that Terry McLaurin scored 13 touchdowns last year. He had 4 games where he scored 2 touchdowns. He was far and away JD5's favorite target, and I'm not saying he can't be that again this year. The Commanders, they added Debo Samuel, of course. We'll see what he has in the tank. They also added a few rookies on the offensive side of the ball, a few skilled position players. I just am expecting that touchdown total to come back down to earth this year. He can still put up a good amount of yards, good reception totals, and I still love the player, love watching him. I just think number 7 wide receiver last year is his peak, and for me to value him like he is the number 7 wide receiver in football is maybe a bit unrealistic. So as much as I love the guy and I hope he repeats this season, I don't think it's in the cards for him. But who knows? That Commanders offense is fun and Jaden Daniels is a beast, so we'll see.
Yeah, I agree a lot more with yours here. I thought about Terry McLaurin as well. Like if you look at all of his stats other than touchdowns, everything is just like right in line with his career norms. 13 touchdowns, far and away the most. Since his rookie year, he's had no more than 5 touchdowns in a single season. And even his rookie year, he had 7. So everything from targets, receptions, yards per catch, yards per target, all that was right within his career norms. Caught a bunch of touchdowns. But the obvious caveat with him is he's had terrible quarterback play his whole career. So while I am with you, I don't necessarily think he's a 13 touchdown a year guy. I do agree that I think he's probably a little overrated. And he was very nearly my selection as well, but I still think a very solid player nonetheless. So
Mhm.
for me, DJ Moore, as the proud owner of Luther Burden here, I think DJ Moore is at the most risk of losing targets here to Luther Burden, but not just Luther Burden. You have Colston Loveland as well. Um, Given the fact that they went into the draft with DJ Moore and Rome, They adding sorry, two pass catchers with two picks in the first two rounds, I think signals a clear message that either they want a lot of options, which they do. If you look at the Lions offense, they had a lot of options, but also maybe not happy with the current in-house options. So DJ Moore, highly paid right now. And there's a huge bump. Everybody really wants to get a piece of the Bears offense, assuming it's going to look like the Lions offense. And he's somebody that I think is a little overrated. I don't necessarily know who the main, beneficiary will be. All of them are going to get some sort of boost. He's just someone that I don't want to be paying his price right now. And in the deal that Tyler acquired DJ Moore, he sent away Kenneth Walker, which as the proud owner of Kenneth Walker, I think that was a something that I wouldn't have done, but who could have known they were going to add two pass catchers right away? So DJ Moore a little overrated for me, but overall, again, still a solid player nonetheless.
Spawn, you want to go or me? Because I have thoughts, but I don't know. If you want to go, go
You're
for
good.
it.
You're good.
Okay. So last year, less than a year ago, DJ Moore signed a 4-year, north of 100 million extension with the Bears. And I just think he wears the C on the chest. You got a new bright-minded offensive coordinator, head coach coming in. You have Caleb Williams, who presumably will see some sort of improvement this year. And DJ Moore, he's still younger than 30. He's shown that he can be an alpha in an offense. I disagree with this one more than I do Savon's, quite honestly. I think DJ Moore is absolutely going to eat. I think that a lot of these younger players, Loveland, Luther, and Rome, will all see the brunt of, being a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. I do think that the veterans will continue to eat in this offense with DJ Moore, even Cole Kmet. Um, I I don't I know it's easy to say with the additions that DJ Moore's the one who takes the hit, but I think there's so much money being given to him, and he's such a valuable presence in the Bears locker room. Maybe you know more about that than I do, Savan. I think it's DJ Moore's wide receiver room to lead, and I am totally okay with trading him for Kenneth Walker when I had a need at receiver.
Mm-hmm. So on, what do you
Um,
got?
yeah, so overrated compared to last year. Last year was kind of a shit show in Chicago. He just barely missed 1,000 yards, but he still comfortably led the Bears in targets with having four reasonable options. I know they have five now. To me, out of the five, obviously Cole Kmet took the biggest hit. Um, Personally, for 2025, if we're looking at that, I would say DJ is definitely safe, and in a Ben Johnson offense, they already proved they can have three very high profile receiving options with Jamison, Amon-Ra, and Laporta. And so I would bet DJ is in the top two this year, and I think everybody would agree. If you have, even if he was to be the second highest fantasy scorer out of the pass catchers in Chicago, I think everybody would buy into that in a Ben Johnson offense. So I definitely don't think he's overrated. Now, if we were talking about over the next few years, um, I think the new regime. Let's see. So they extended him with 2 years left on his deal with the old regime, and that was just because Chicago really doesn't see much talent um, come in, and so I think Ben just wanted to shore up the pass catchers for if DJ doesn't work out. But I think locked and loaded for the 2025 season, he definitely has wide receiver one upside, um, and I think his floor is probably around wide receiver 20. And so yeah, I think he could finish. It's a big range, but I think he for 2025 he could finish anywhere between like 6 and 20. So I wouldn't say he's overrated.
Yeah, all fair points, and it's very possible. I'm not saying he's not going to have a good year. He very well could have a good year, and that's very much within his his range of outcomes. But just for me, I he's not someone that I would want to be taking a hit on at his current price. So again, that's just my opinion. I think again, both just this year with an uncertain, pecking order. I agree he's likely the favorite to be the lead, but on Keep Trade Cut right now, he's wide receiver 30, and that's just a little higher than I'd want to pay for him right now. So okay, last section here, droppable. Demario Douglas. Not a whole lot to say here. Tyler, he probably shouldn't be on your roster. Kind of sucks.
Well, there's no one else I'd rather add. Pop Douglas. Yeah, he'll catch a few screens and he'll look good doing it. So I'll let him ride the bench to a championship.
I know I said I had Demario. That's just because I think we kind of just had to put one in there. But there is I know they added Diggs, and Douglas played in the slot majority last year. Um, so, but they also don't have like any receivers outside of Diggs and Kyle Williams. So if they could find a way to coexist, Diggs and Douglas somehow, I could see him being relevant. But it's just hard to see him relevant right now with the addition of Diggs.
Yeah, I don't
That's
have
fine.
anything else.
I won't take that personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I nearly put DeAndre Hopkins for this, but I didn't. And we'll talk about him later, but he was my alternative for this, so I just wasn't able to break from the consensus. Okay, so those are kind of our accolades here. We're going to go position by position here. Just break down any other names that didn't come up, any other thoughts on the room as a whole. I'm going to just see a couple of intermittent questions and discourse here before we wrap up. So start with the quarterbacks here. We talked about Fields at length here. I don't think really much needs to be said there. Drafted in the 12th round of the inaugural draft. And then his second round pick from the inaugural draft still has Kyler Murray. And then, obviously, as again, we already talked about last week, Cam Ward, his seventh overall pick of the rookie draft. So, as a whole, not a very deep room as far as the number of players, but you've got three bona fide starters in the NFL, assuming Cam Ward starts week one, two very mobile quarterbacks. So, Tyler, well, how do you feel about your quarterback room right now?
Yeah, this is perfect for me. This is how I like setting up my room on my team is having, if I can, three starters. Just last year it was Kyler, Russ, and sometimes Justin Fields. So this is perfect for me. You don't need to talk about Fields too much. Ward, he'll probably stay on the bench unless he shows, you know, consistency in his rookie year that I can start him. Kyler, we know what he is at this point. The little bonus for me with Kyler Murray is the stack he creates with Trey McBride, who we've talked about. So I feel good to start, at least right now, starting Fields and Murray every week and trusting that a good amount of their value will be derived from their legs. And that's sometimes what you want in a fantasy quarterback. So
Yeah.
I'm happy with it.
As someone who was very in on Kyler last year, I was a little disappointed that he just didn't run as much as he used to. Second year off the ACL tear, I was really hoping for more, but obviously he's got a lot of weapons at his disposal through the air, and they're investing a lot of money into him. So the less he runs in non-important situations, probably the better it is for his long-term health. But I just don't know if Kyler has that top five upside anymore, but I still feels like he's comfortably like a back end QB1. And again, in a super flex league, when you took him probably right around that range in terms of quarterback selected in the inaugural draft, I got no problem with that. I love the room as a whole. Like you said, having three bona fide starters is very comforting to have. And you still have a lot of upside with two high rushing floor quarterbacks. So, Cevan, any other comments on the quarterback room here?
Yeah, I'll say also love the quarterback room. Sliding Kyler to your assumed QB2, assuming Justin Fields is your QB1 per se. That's more of Kyler's role. I would feel really uncomfortable if Kyler was my QB1 as my best option, I believe. And then Justin Fields also has never played a full season. So having a third starting quarterback is assuming Cam Ward gets the full season and he's healthy. He's going to have to fill in your lineup at some point. And hopefully it's not early so Cam can develop. And then by the time Justin gets hurt, which he will, because he always has, um, then you have another quarterback option. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty solid quarterback room here. A little hypothetical for everybody. What's more likely that Tyler has three top 12 quarterbacks in terms of the three that he has now, or none of them finish in the top 12?
For
I
me,
think
it's good. You go. It's fine.
I was gonna say I think it's pretty easily zero top 12 quarterbacks.
What?
Yeah.
It's pretty easily three
Yeah.
top 12 for
Here.
me.
Okay. So my perspective, Cam Ward, he's a rookie. There's a lot of viable quarterbacks nowadays. Like Sam Darnold was a QB1. You got all he can run, but his college tape showed that he's more of a passer. So he still can run. But anyways, um, there's just a lot of quarterbacks. Plus, like I said, Fields always gets hurt. He'll play anywhere between 10 and 15 games. And then Kyler, like Reed said, he didn't run as much. It's a run heavy offense. He's never thrown. Oh, I don't know if I can say never. I don't know if he's ever thrown for 4,000 yards. And I could see a world where everything goes south and Cam isn't a good quarterback. Justin gets hurt early, and then Kyler just doesn't have the passing touchdown volume or runs a lot.
He's
Okay.
never thrown for 4,000 yards.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I didn't expect this to be this divisive, so I'm happy it is. So, Tyler, you said you're pretty easily three top 12 quarterbacks. What's your
Yeah.
side?
I don't even really want to explain it. Like, I think it's these guys, it's hard to measure upside, but in my mind, and my gut feeling, all three of them have a tremendous amount of upside in their own ways. Not saying they're likely to hit it or going to hit it. They could totally all bust, but I just think that's so much more unlikely. With three guys that have a fair amount of upside, I think, I don't think, I don't know. That's my thoughts. I think the upside outweighs the risk in this scenario.
I'm very torn, which is how I came up with the question. To break the tie here, I think I would lean towards zero top 12 quarterbacks purely because of the fact that you're relying on two running quarterbacks who have had injuries in the past. And again, like if it was a guaranteed healthy year, I would easily go for three top 12. But the injury aspect of it is very clearly a factor. I'm not as adamant that Justin Fields will get hurt
He
because
will.
that's not a certainty. But at the same time, I think Cam Ward not being necessarily someone like, to have a rookie top 12 quarterback like, say, Jaden Daniels last year, you need somebody that has the rushing upside to be able to put touchdowns on the board to really kind of boost that up. Like, how many bona fide top 12 guys don't have rushing upside? It's basically like Joe Burrow, and he's thrown to two of the best receivers in football. And then you add in the injury risk of the other two. Um, I would lean slightly towards zero, but I also see a world where both those two are healthy and Cam Ward has a good rookie year and he sneaks into I mean, again, like Sam Darnold was a top 12 quarterback last year. So I could very easily see a world where three top 12 is possible, but I would lean slightly towards no top 12 quarterbacks as more likely.
Bo Nix was rookie last year.
He had
Now,
rushing value.
And Sean Payton.
I think I think Cam Ward has rushing value that we maybe didn't see at Miami.
Okay, that's
But
very possible. I'm not
yeah,
saying that's not the case,
Yeah,
but
but I don't think Kim Ward's a 600-yard guy. I think he's like a 300-yard guy.
like
that's
a,
fine.
a Patrick Mahomes type, like he can
Yeah.
scramble and like scramble for 2 to 4 touchdowns,
Yeah,
300-ish yards, but not like I'm going to pull some read options and pick up first downs often.
exactly.
Sure.
Whereas
Yeah,
Justin Fields ran for 1,100 yards, and
arguably
Kyler's
his
ran
only
for
good
like,
skill.
yeah, that's my point.
Yeah,
But and like Kyler, he ran for like 700, but he's also a rookie, and I think everybody can confidently say Cam Ward. So we had Bo Nix. Oops, sorry. We had Bo Nix and we had Jaden Daniels and uh, Drake and Caleb. Where where does where does Cam Ward
and
go in
Michael
last year's
Penix.
class? QB what? Off the board is what I'm getting at.
I don't
I
two,
wasn't
three.
following that closely.
Basically, all I'm saying is, yeah, he's the number one overall pick, but in a really bad draft class. quarterback wise. And I don't know if anybody believes in is it Zach Taylor or
That's the
is
Bengals. It's Brian Callahan.
Brian? Okay, yeah, I don't
Not
know.
Bo Callahan, Brian Callahan.
Yes. Plus they have a 30-some-year-old Calvin Ridley. I don't know. I don't know if I believe in what the Titans got going on.
We'll
Well,
see. I'm glad that was a fun question here. So, quarterback room done. On to running backs here. A very deep room here for Tyler. We've talked at length about Joe Mixon already. We've talked about Marshawn Lloyd, Tank Bigsby, Trey Benson already. James Conner has been mentioned in passing in the Trey Benson talks, but his other current starting running back is James Conner. And then he has a couple other smaller names, Ja'Cory, Krosky, Merritt, Jaden Blue, who we talked about last week in the rookie draft, and then Zach Charbonnet as the handcuff to Kenneth Walker. So just starting at the top, Cevan, we'll kick it to you first. What are your thoughts on his running back room as a whole?
Running back room has a lot of depth. To me, it lacks super high upside. Um, James Conner is 30 years old. I already talked about Trey Benson breakout. So there's that. The only thing about that is if it does get to a point where they're both getting work, you're only going to start one of them. And so that could become a headache. So you should probably trade me Trey so you don't have to deal with it.
hmm.
Um, Mixon, again, locked and loaded as the RB1 for the Texans. Maybe that production falls off. Maybe it doesn't. He could have another good year, score a lot of touchdowns. Um, Jaden Blue, dart throw. Cowboys running back is usually good, except for the last couple years or whatever. So, I mean, a dart throw at a Cowboys running back is not a bad option. And then you got just depth pieces that could carve out roles. So, as far as the top, James Conner, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, that's a solid, very solid room. Like I said, you have an all right floor. I just don't love the ceiling personally. So pass it on to one of you.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts as well. I think he has a like not just the two starting guys, but it'll lean a little bit into my next question, but a lot of dart throws on the bench that one injury or one change in the system can lead to another starting running back. So the depth here is among the best in the entire league. And this was again after trading Kenneth Walker away in your deal earlier, who's a bona fide starting running back at the very least. So to me, very similar thoughts to Savon. It lacks superstar upside, but one of the deepest leagues in the room, deepest rooms in the league. Tyler, do you agree with our assessments there?
Yeah, and this a deep running back room exactly what I'm going for here. Running back is the position I could not care less about in terms of superstar power. Screw Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't need
Okay.
Bijan.
Wow, those are
I don't
fighting words
Relax.
there.
I I don't need those guys. Do you guys know who I started in week 5 and he scored me 18 big ones?
No idea.
I started Trey Sermon, who
Last
was
year?
last year in week 5. He's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. He scored 18 points. And was it a sexy 18 points? Of course not. It's Trey Sermon on the Indianapolis
It was
Colts
like 6 catches for like 30 yards. If I like,
and
it was just
one
a
gar in a
yeah,
garbage time touchdown.
horribly inefficient.
But the reason I bring him up is I think in terms of injuries and opportunities, I feel pretty confident that some of those guys outside of Connor, Mixon, and Swift, probably the most established of my group here, there's going to be at least one player that I think carves out a role and is startable. Or Kenneth Walker gets injured and Zach Charbonnet is
Hey,
a
hey,
high
hey,
end
hey, hey, hey,
is a
chill.
high end RB2 for the rest of the season, whatever it is. I don't care about superstar power here. I love my depth
hmm
and I love this room.
Well, into my next question, which one of his handcuffs is most likely to produce fantasy points for him this year in a starting role on his fantasy team? Marshawn Lloyd, Trey Benson, or Zach Charbonnet? Tyler, who would be your pick? Obviously, we talked about Lloyd already as your sleeper guy for the
Mhm.
team, but which one of those three do you feel like has the best chance to end up being a starter for you?
I think pretty comfortably I'd have to go Charbonnet, and I actually think that's not necessarily because of direct handcuff, but I think Charbonnet and Walker might be a 1A, 1B situation. And Charbonnet looked really good in some of the opportunities he got last year. So I'll say Charbonnet here.
Savan, disagreement?
I'm
Gonna say Trey Benson, I bet.
no. This is a tough one. I would probably lean Charbonnet because he's proved that he can handle a role, whereas Trey Benson has yet to prove anything. Mine's just more of a prediction of James Conner kind of slowing down, and since they are so run heavy, that Trey Benson can kind of just carve out his whole role. So I would probably lean Charbonnet, where Kenneth Walker has also had some injury history, even though he's locked and loaded for this year. Actually, fuck it, we're going Trey Benson. Trey Benson is the GOAT. He's taking over the RB1 role
Wow, this
by
escalated quickly.
week 8. Trey Benson, it's Trey Benson season 2025 breakout.
Well, unfortunately, I will have to go with Charbonnet as well. I don't think there's any chance that he's a 1B to Walker, but the injury history is undeniable. I think Walker is a great fit for the offense, and they're going to be putting a lot on him this year. So um, I don't think there's any chance he gets a 1B role, but the chances of him getting hurt, and then also in a good offense already, where I think the Cardinals' offense is a little less sure about what it's going to be. And I think it's a little bit less sure that Lloyd is the direct handcuff to Josh Jacobs. So I would go Charbonnet as well, as much as it hurts me. Not to say that I think he will, but definitely I think the most likely of that group.
Yeah.
Savan, any last comments on Trey Benson? Because I think it's the last time he's going to come up.
Ever.
He'll get brought up soon at the beginning of an episode when he's traded.
Okay,
Okay.
So we'll save it for that.
sounds good. We'll move on here to the receivers. The meat and potatoes, as Tyler said, he couldn't care less about running back star power, but this is where he makes his money. Talked about DJ Moore, talked about Devontae Adams, talked about Terry McLaurin. His last starter as of this moment is Zay Flowers. Um, Picked up Arian Smith. I don't even know that name. Post draft, still has the corpse of DeAndre Hopkins that he traded a first round pick for last year. No, sorry, he acquired in a deal with Hopkins and a first round pick. Sorry, much better in that way. We all think he should drop Demario Douglas. Talked about Ayu Manor in the rookie one. The rookie episode, I talked about Jacoby Myers and big fan of him. We talked about Kyle Williams already. So, really, I guess, Tyler, what do you have on your receiver room here since you're a big fan of receivers?
Yeah, well, my room's filled with a bunch of old heads here. Uh, but I'm not scared of that. I was really pleased to see Savon put some respect on Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams had a 40 plus point game last year, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns. He still got the juice. DJ Moore, McLaurin, we both talked about, even though they're both in the overrated section. I don't That obviously doesn't mean they're bad or anything. Say Flowers. He We haven't talked about him too much. He's kind of my younger stud in the wide receiver room. I think he's a steady presence. I think his upside isn't much higher than what he's been. That's perfectly fine. Myers, looking at this room here is really important depth for me to have. If any of those four get injured or depends on the matchup, maybe he's starting over one of them. We'll see. I'm not as confident as some of my running backs that maybe these younger wide receivers are going to show out, specifically Arian Smith, Ayu Manor, and Kyle Williams. I hope at least one of them does. I think my favorite there is obviously Kyle Williams, who I spent third round rookie pick on. So this is probably the part of my team I'm most skeptical about. But if they produce like they did last year, then I should have no problems.
So if we assume that you probably view Devontae Adams as your highest ceiling here, who do you think has a better chance to finish as a top 10 wide receiver between McLaurin and DJ Moore?
Um,
Or I guess
I,
someone else, but I
I
would guess you choose one of those two.
I would choose Terry McLaurin still.
Okay. Savan, what are your thoughts on the wide receiver room here?
I like it. Along with the running backs, I feel like you have depth here. I count about 6 players that I'd feel good about going into 2025. It's kind of along the same lines where if you want to compare Devontae to Joe Mixon. They're kind of your RB1 and your wide receiver one. In my opinion, I would take Devontae as my wide receiver one. Anyways, um, but then if you want to look at the negatives, the DJ Moore situation in Chicago could play out. On the range of outcomes, it could be a bad situation. Terry McLaurin, I'm not in on Debo Samuel, but they added him. Um, so that takes away some touches, probably not a lot. But I mean, they were throwing to guys like Alameda Zaccheaus and Noah Brown and Luke McCaffrey. So, I mean, they added somebody and paid him some money. So, and then Zay Flowers. I was a Zay Flowers owner last year in a couple leagues, and he is just a very sketchy start. A lot of the year he was putting up points, but right when it got to the fantasy playoffs, he completely disappeared. I remember there was a game where I think he had, and this is his range of outcomes. He had 27 points at halftime, and by the end of the game, he was at 27 points.
Are you
Um,
complaining about a 27-point game?
no, I'm just saying he's a guy that like I could see him 2 for 15, or I could see him 8 for 150 and two. Like he's just a high risk, high reward player, which is good to have in your lineup. Overall, I really like the room. Um, it's kind of like what Tyler was saying, like not screw running backs, but I'd rather have my value elsewhere in the team if I had to rank positions. But having
Does that mean
depth,
Jahmyr Gibbs is on the block?
yeah, you come acquire Jahmyr Gibbs if you want. I'm selling him for or another running back. Um, but yeah, having six receivers, in my opinion, that you feel good about going into the season is good to fill up your flex spots.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts. I think we can all kind of agree Devontae Adams is his highest ceiling guy here, and I think a top 10 or even approaching like a top 5 season is very much within his range of outcomes. And kind of similar to the running backs. Like I just feel like some of these guys lack ceiling. Zay Flowers is going to get you 5 or 25, so they're ceiling in that way. But I don't think any of us really see a consistent like 15 to 20 point a week guy. But the depth is awesome. Like I said, huge Jacoby Myers fan. The top four receivers he has in his starting lineup right now are all guys you can comfortably start every week and feel that you're not starting someone you shouldn't be starting. So throw in Jacoby Myers and there's 5 guys that are flex worthy or better. And then you add in the upside of Kyle Williams. So again, huge fan of the room as a whole, very depthy and kind of been the theme here as we started from the title card. Like the depth plus the picks could make him really dangerous if he wants to be dangerous. So we'll see. I don't have a fun question for this one, so we're just going to hop right over into tight ends here. Okay, so on to the tight ends here. Clearly a strength just from one name alone. McBride talked about him in depth. I don't really know how much more we have to talk about there. He just picked up Chig Okonkwo on waivers, which I don't really know why he was on waivers. I think Sandy had some better players to drop than him, but picked up Chig Okonkwo on waivers, and then he still got Jatavion Sanders from last year. A late round dart throw that ended up showing some good stuff with the Panthers here at the end of the year, revamped Bryce Young led offense. So Tyler, not a very deep room, but you've got your guy. What do you do you have anything else to say here on the tight ends?
No, I feel comfortable, kind of similar to the quarterback room. I like have 3 tight ends on the roster just for depth reasons. I do think in the I was really high on Jatavian Sanders before the draft. Obviously, the Panthers drafted Tedero McMillan, so that maybe hurts his stock just a little bit. But if he shows out in the first few weeks, Jatavian Sanders or Trey McBride may become expendable. We'll see. Jatavian Sanders is another player on my team who got pretty decent draft capital. I believe he was a third round pick in 2024, maybe second, something like that. But um, no, nothing major here. I mean, McBride's starting week in, week out. If the other two fill in when they need to, that's gravy for me.
Savon, anything new to add there?
No, I mean you're obviously starting Trey every week, and then Chig and Jatavion, they both do have competition. Jatavion has Tommy Tremble, and Chig has the newly acquired Gunnar Helm. So we'll see how their rooms shake out. So if anything happened to McBride at this moment, I'd be scared to start one of them, but I could also see a path to relevance for both of them. So very solid, best or very solid room for the team.
Yeah, I got nothing new to add. McBride's awesome. The other two have path to production. So
I was
again,
wrong. Sorry, Sanders was drafted in the fourth round. So
yep,
Okay.
okay. But yeah, deep room, a lot of path to production for the other two, but very similar to all your other rooms. But this one has star power at the top and depth. So definitely one of the stronger tight end rooms in the league here. No fun question here. So I believe what we're moving on to now, each of us have prepared a hot take for Tyler's team this season, whether that be trades, finish, scoring, whatever it is. We have a hot take. So I believe Cevan is first here. So Cevan, your hot take. Tyler's team would be better off if he traded Trey McBride. What the heck? Walk us
wow,
through it.
Wow. Okay. So, hot take, Tyler. I think your team would be a lot better without Trey McBride. Let me get into it. So, as we kind of a theme of this, at least, yeah, a theme of this episode has us kind of been saying we like your rooms, but you don't have star power. The only star power, true star power, proven star power. I know Devontae's proved it in the past, but he's on a new team. Is Trey McBride. And being in a tight end premium league, I know Reed started off the episode by saying that's a huge advantage, which it is. But having a guy like Trey McBride be a huge advantage, um, I'll get back to what I was saying. Part of the reason I have you in playoff aspirations is the lack of star power. And I think the return you could net off trading a guy like Trey McBride to a team that has star power at other positions. I think Trey McBride could be the center of a blockbuster that you easily improve your team. Um, there's not a lot of top end tight ends like Brock Bowers, McBride, if you want to call Laporta that. I'm probably missing some guys. There's not a lot of guys like that, but there are a lot of tight ends that you can put in your lineup and be happy with what they give you. And with it being a onesie position, um, I feel like with what you could get on a return, the point production elsewhere spread out throughout your roster instead of stuck in one spot. To me personally, I think your team could shape up to be a lot better and push you into that contenders category. In my opinion, that's kind of the separator is the top end talent, and I think Trey McBride could get you that.
Tyler, your response.
problem is if I'm trading my superstar, I don't know if I'm getting a superstar back because if I trade Trey McBride for one of the top running backs or wide receivers. In their mind, they're going to want Trey McBride plus a little extra to get that player. And in my mind, I'm saying, give me that player and a little extra for Trey McBride. And it's just like when you have a player that's so good and, a well-known superstar, it's going to be so hard to part ways with him, regardless of, what the true value is there. So I feel like if I were to trade him, it would just be for more, players that are just under that superstar level, adjacent to DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Joe Mixon. It's just like not quite superstars, and I don't need any more of that. So hot take, maybe a bad take, but I respect it because it is a hot take.
I also agree with the bad take here. I feel like if you're knocking his team for star power and then your solution is to trade the only player we all think is a star for players who are less of a star, I don't know if that solves anything. So I'm going to
Did
go with bad
okay,
take on this
okay,
one.
but did I ever during that point say trade your superstar for not superstars?
But what is trading his superstar for a different superstar? How does that upgrade him?
Sounds
Well,
like you're
you told me I couldn't say any trade specifics. So
sounds like you're offering me Jameer Gibbs for Trey McBride then,
no, that's not
or
what I was getting
Leak.
at. I was okay. I'm not going to use any names, but I was more getting at you trade Trey. You yes, it would be a downgrade in tight end, but you trade Trey for a lesser tight end
Sure.
plus other positions, and then you could even get Q and add one of your running backs or receivers, blah blah blah, and it could turn into something. The way I was viewing it, like I had like mock trades, not just the one I was telling you about, Reed. and that was a quick glance because I was at Home Depot. But I actually went through a process and like mocked out a trade that I would be personally, and this is me, my opinion, that I would definitely consider if I was the owner of said, or I guess if I was just running your team. It's my perspective. It's a hot take. That's all right.
Yeah, no, you're good. Deep in the weeds of another man's team with mock trades is that's dedication. So I
That right
respect.
there is what makes this pod special right here.
Yep.
Yep.
Tyler, I will offer you Garrett Wilson plus for Trey McBride. That's still on the table. You can stack with Justin Fields. That's on
Oh,
the
baby.
table.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, on to my hot take here. Not as spicy as Savant's, but also probably more reasonable. Neither Joe Mixon or James Conner are your top scoring running back at the end of the year this season. We talked in depth about all the dart throws and handcuffs you have on your bench. DeAndre Swift is still sitting as the Bears' top running back. Tank Bigsby, not necessarily a handcuffed, but hopefully going to be part of a good offense this year in Jacksonville. So not nearly as spicy, but given the fact that Joe Mixon and James Conner have historically meaning the last 2 years or so, very reliable, very good scoring running backs and good offenses at worst. Um, my hot take is that I think someone on your bench ends up outscoring both of them at the end of the year.
Nice. I love this as a take. I don't necessarily. It's hot, of course, and I'd be feeling pretty conflicted if Mixon and James Conner are up there. But if I hit on one of those other running backs, man, I'm gonna feel like Einstein. So I love this take. We'll see.
Savan, any thoughts?
Um, I don't kind of what Tyler was saying, but it's like let's say for example Charbonnet hits and he's his top scorer, which I would feel like Mixon and Connor would just be they would have to be either hurt or just super down years, and so they kind of lose value. And so I don't know how good I would feel of a trade off for my who I think are going to be my top running backs to fall off a cliff and now they're useless to me and everybody else just for maybe a second half Charbonnet replacing Kenneth Walker because he's hurt just for that. So I don't that's kind of how I see it is they fell off rather than maybe they're just replacing an injured player or whatever.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
don't know.
say I didn't necessarily say they'll get hurt or they'll be
Yeah.
bad, but that one of his bench pieces just pops off and ends up outscoring them with some spike weeks. So okay, last hot take. Tyler's hot take for his own team. The Kyler Murray, Trey McBride stack are traded midseason. Pretty bold words from someone who is in control of their destiny. Tyler, it seems
Yeah.
like they're on the block as of this moment. What does that mean?
Let me make it explicitly clear that Kyler Murray and Trey McBride are not on the block. When they are on the block, the league will be notified via Sleeper and Discord. I'll text everyone individually if you guys want me to, that they're available. This takes more about, I feel very good about where my team's at. However, it's fantasy football, and I could lose four straight. And at that point, it might be a lost season. Now, what I think is the spiciest part of this take, and maybe I didn't word it quite right, is Kyler Murray and Trey McBride would be traded together in the same trade as a stack. Maybe it's a multiple team trade. Maybe it's just with one other person. But if things go wrong and I'm sitting there in the basement of the standings and I am just looking at 2026 and beyond, these two could be the first to go. Not even going to guarantee that. But the hot take here is if it goes like that, then perhaps they are traded together and the whole league gets to look at the biggest trade package going my way in league history. Maybe.
Wow, that's pretty bold. Given the fact that you put yourself in the contender role, I find this one hard to believe, but at the same time, I also respect the balls on it. Savon, do you have any thoughts here? Would you be in the running if they became available?
Um
Your quarterbacks
ooh,
kind of suck, so you might need him.
if ooh, I don't know.
Left a
That's
man
tough.
speechless with that one.
If you were trading Trey and Kyler and they're having great years, but the rest of your players are I don't know. I don't think I would be able to offer I don't think I'd be able to put together the biggest package
Maybe
for him.
if I
So
put them on the block, I'll only allow them to be traded together so I can feel super big brain when it happens.
Well, or you can put players on the block like Cevan and then make fun of people for trying to make trade offers for him. That's the
you could
best.
you could do that.
Okay, hot takes over. Last talking point here. Each of us have taken the league together and put what we think is each team's playoff odds, and we're calling them the championship odds, or basically the bye odds. The chances they make the championship game, the chances they secure a bye, basically the chances they're the top two team in the league. We've formatted the whole league together, so all the numbers check out. Um, and here's what we have. Savan, the lowest on Tyler's team, 49% chance at the playoffs, and just a 5% chance to make the championship game. I'm a little bit higher. I have a 55% chance of the playoffs and a much higher chance on his championships. And then Tyler, about an equidistance from me as I was to Savan with 63% playoffs and 19% championships. So Tyler, we're going to start or end with you here. So Savan,
Okay.
you're the lowest. Give us just a little bit of insight into your odds here for Tyler's team.
Yeah, so when we were doing our rankings 1 through 12, I had Tyler just outside the top 6 at 7, and I like him. I don't remember who the other team was, so I'm not going to name drop. But basically, it was between him and somebody else um, to get in, and so I just gave them just below 50%. Um, and then, yeah, pretty much what I've been saying all day is just the lack of star power when there's a bunch of teams that are super high ceiling. I just don't see as high of a ceiling because of the lack of star power. Whereas there is a world where all this depth carries him all year when my team's hurt and bent and all my 3 IR spots are filled up where I'm scrapping and clawing to freaking start Audric Estime. And so,
Second round worthy. Audric estimate that guy.
yeah, that's
Okay.
the one. So, yeah, I mean, basically 50% odds, 50-50. That's everybody's odds anyway. So I'm
Yep.
right on par with the league.
I think that's a fun point there from Savan. Everybody's playoff odds are a lot closer to 50-50 than we'd actually like to think, but it's a lot more fun to get off that 50-50 scale. So I've very similar thoughts to Savan. My championship odds look a lot higher than Savan's. I just think mine were a little bit more evenly distributed because once again, I think everybody has a lot better or everybody's a lot closer to each other in terms of their championship odds than we probably realize. But I think similar to Tyler, I had his championship odds kind of like in the 5 to 7 range of the league. So yeah, I think he's got better than a coin flip chance. Again, I had him in the playoff aspirations bucket. I think he's right on the edge of the playoff quality team, but his depth in the end, I think, would probably put him in a good spot. Even if he has an injury or two, he's better equipped than most teams to deal with that. So, Tyler, you're the highest on your own team, as you should be. Talk
Mhm.
us through just a little bit of your playoff odds and championship odds.
Yeah, Savon kind of hit on it a bit. Depth and my draft picks that I could use as trade capital are kind of my bread and butter and what I'm leaning on this year. I plan to be very fluid with my roster, and if I need to make certain roster cuts or trade future draft capital to get someone who's being shopped, whatever it may be, I feel pretty solid that, whatever weakness I have in my team or whatever injuries happen, I can patch those up through trades or my depth. And I think that's what sets my roster apart from, some of these other teams kind of in the middle of the right power rankings. I don't think I'm a top three, top four team. I I think in certain scenarios I could be that, but on average, I don't think I am that. So right now, I'm feeling good about my team and excited to see where I end up. So I'm totally okay with being the highest on my team. And of course, yeah, like you said, Reed, that's what you want. So we'll see.
Awesome. That wraps up everything we have for the team breakdown. Any last thoughts from you guys, whether it be on Tyler's team, the process, anything you guys want to conclude with here?
Uh, yeah, one thing for me is I was I've been thinking about this kind of throughout the episode is having to go first for this, like with your team, Tyler, in what are
Yeah,
we mid May? Like I'm sure your team's going to look much different, and
you're
um, what you just touched on, like with your draft capital, like your team has so much potential to. I don't mean like flip by the time the season starts, but you could do so much to where you easily catapult yourself up into the top four, top three, and bump your odds up in the into a contender or a favorite. So your roster, draft picks included, has a lot of potential, and excited to see how the next 3 or 4 months shake out for you.
Yeah,
yeah.
that before you go, Tyler, that's a good point. We're doing this literally 3 months from like anything actually happening in the NFL. So both the playoff odds, championship odds, power ranking tiers, all those are subject to change here throughout the offseason. We're just starting with our three teams here so we can kind of get a feel. So, Tyler, concluding thoughts from you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys telling me what's good, what's bad about my team. Uh, sounds like you both are a little bit of Cam Ward haters, but that's
What?
okay.
How am I a Cam Ward
Yeah,
hater?
what?
You guys said he couldn't rush.
I'm
I
just
said
talking about,
he doesn't have the rushing upside as
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Justin
okay.
or Kyler.
And I
Fair.
just said that he didn't do it much in college, which
Yeah.
factual.
Sure.
But
All right.
Patrick Mahomes is a perfectly, like I said, I comped him to a Mahomes as far as his rushing ability. Like he'll scramble, he'll pick up some yards, but you're never going to be like, yeah, let's have him pull a read option here and pick up a first
Yeah.
down,
Uh,
unless it's like a clear, advantage. So not a
uh,
hater.
well, sorry for. Okay, I apologize for the slander,
Yeah.
but
Fuck you.
Wow.
I'm excited to break down your guys' teams. So
I'm
appreciate you
not.
guys doing that. So
Yep. Tune in next week. We're breaking down the reigning champion, the Monkas, uh, going over his team, all seven of his draft picks, all the players he has on his roster. We'll talk through his team and give our thoughts on it. So we'll see you guys next week.